Hello everyone, our topic this week is a low request from Zangonov and Steve Bruce. We'll be going over the comics from the Darksiders series.
While no comics for Fury and Darksiders 3 have been released thus far, and to the best of our knowledge as of writing this video, no announcements have been made about plans to change that fact in the future, both Darksiders 1 and 2 had companion comics released alongside them. In Darksiders 1 case, a single-issue comic for War, and in Darksiders 2's case, a 5-issue miniseries centering on Death.
War's comic, Darksiders The Graphic Adventure, has very little in it that would be new to those who played the first game. It briefly goes over the original history of the Nephilim, the race to which the Four Horsemen belong, which was changed with the release of Darksiders 2. For more info on that, see our video on the Nephilim as a race here. Mostly, it introduces us to the important characters from the game: Samael, Abaddon, Uriel, Azrael, Ulthane, the Watcher, and the Charred Council, as well as giving us our first glimpse of the other three of the Four Horsemen: Fury, Death, and Strife. The comic flashes back and forth a bit between War's initial arrival on Earth during the prologue of the Darksiders 1 game, when he was summoned for the apocalypse, and a series of events from the past leading up to the beginning of the game. The first of these past events, and in our opinion the most interesting, is the story of how War lost his arm. Yes, for those unfamiliar, War's gothic Hellboy arm is a magical prosthetic. It's not just a giant gauntlet or something, which we assumed it was when we first played the game.
At some point, long ago, War let his natural battle lust, combined with the influence of his sword, Chaos Eater, send him on a killing frenzy that was either unsanctioned or continued long after his job was done. According to the comic, part of a larger pattern War had of being difficult for the Charred Council to control. Interestingly, War's tendency to get lost in battle and that tendency's relation to his sword are both touched on briefly in this comic and in the Abomination Vault novel, though never in the game. The Council first sends a small army after War to bring him home. After War slaughters all of them, the Council sent a second army, this time headed by War's brothers and sister, Death, Strife, and Fury. When told to come home, War replied that after killing the first set of messengers, he could never go back. And when he was told that the choice was not his, the Four Horsemen and a few of the braver, more foolish among the army in tow engaged in battle, with War cutting down several of the mooks before they were told to hang back. When it was down to the four of them, War made a charge for Fury, only to be intercepted by Death, who took the blow instead, allowing himself to be fully impaled on Chaos Eater, as they determined the best way to beat War was to take the sword away, since battle fueled it, and thus War himself. As a side note, Death didn't seem to care about having his torso nearly bisected and instead simply told War to learn from this experience, while Fury cut off War's arm. War was then dragged, still at least somewhat unwillingly, back to the Council, and is later shown with a seeming distaste at being made to use Chaos Eater. A distaste he apparently gets over, as it's never brought up again. Ever since, War has been shown with the oversized prosthetic arm that we're all familiar with. And that's it. That's all we know about that arm. We don't even know its special abilities other than it's big.
Besides these events, the comics also show Abaddon pleading before a massive council of angels for leave to make war on the demons and being denied, followed by the beginnings of his secret meeting with Azrael and Ulthane that would ultimately lead to the events of the first game. For more info on that, see our lore video on Abaddon here. As well as a brief shot of the Four Horsemen showing up on Samael's doorstep, informing him that the truce between heaven and hell was to stand, a warning which Samael sidesteps by reminding the Horsemen that he is not the ruler of hell, in response to which War tells Samael they know him to be second in line. This is also where we first see Lilith, who tells the Horsemen to go look into Abaddon if they seek warmongers. Finally, the comic ends with a Watcher running to the Council to inform them that war had broken out on Earth between heaven and hell, and that the Horseman War had arrived, and yet the seven seals of the apocalypse appear to be intact. Which is when we are shown a hint that the Council are already aware of these events, as well as the reason that War is present, facts we know to be true from the first Darksiders game, so they kill her, for basically being too good at her job, and send War's Watcher off to mess with War.
Death's comics, collectively entitled Darksiders, Death's Door, are less immediately tied to Death's game, Darksiders 2, but the tie-in does exist, as despite Death not realizing this fact, this story is about Death's first encounter with corruption and its capabilities. The comic opens up with Death waiting in a back alley of the White City for the arrival of Abaddon, who had discreetly called the Horsemen to ask him for a favor. The two had a brief fight when Abaddon arrived, with Abaddon claiming he wanted to test Death's battle prowess and be certain that his reputation was well earned. Now, those familiar with the Abomination Vault novel might find this odd, as at first glance this makes it sound like the two have never met, and the novel takes place well before the comic, where the two do in fact meet. However, we presume this to mean that the two have simply never actually seen each other in battle, since, despite a handful of meetings in the Abomination Vault novel, Death and Abaddon are never around each other when things come to blows during the story, which is the only thing that makes sense for this comic's opening few panels. Regardless, once the two sheath their respective weapons, Abaddon asks Death to track down a rogue demon for him, one that has fled to Earth after slaughtering at least 10 of his finest soldiers, with his warriors' seeming inability to handle the demon in question being the reason Abaddon asks for the horsemen's help. Death initially refuses, but is eventually convinced to go in search of the demon, and when he tells Abaddon that his scythe won't work on Earth without leave of the Council, this entire mission being unsanctioned, Abaddon suggests that Death seek Vulgrim, as the demon merchant would likely be able to provide a suitable weapon replacement.
Death follows Abaddon's advice, showing up on Vulgrim's doorstep, since apparently Vulgrim has a brick-and-mortar location somewhere before the events of the apocalypse and doesn't just loiter around random places in the cosmos. Vulgrim agrees to provide Death with a presumably powerful and/or well-made scythe or two, but in return wants the tongue of a leviathan, powerful creatures, at least some of which inhabit the river Styx, as that is where Death goes. He acquires the tongue, bringing it back to Vulgrim complete with the leviathan's entire giant head, before moving on to stage 2 of his plan to track down the demon on Earth. The Abomination Vault novel and these comics both depict the Four Horsemen possessing the ability to travel between worlds in the Darksiders universe, seemingly at will. However, we learn from this comic that either this power likely comes from the Charred Council, or at the very least the Council can sense when this world-hopping ability is used by their horsemen enforcers, as Death seeks the aid of the Horsemaster, an old ally who is responsible for showing each of the Four Horsemen how to tame and bond with their mighty steeds. After a short discussion, the Horsemaster, trusting that Death's causes are generally just, agrees to open a serpent hole to Earth for Death so that Death can travel incognito.
Stepping through, Death arrives on Earth, which is when we get our timestamp for this whole endeavor, as well as all of our answers. Death finds his quarry in Marseille, France in the year 1722. He also discovers that instead of hunting a demon, he's been hunting a rogue angel, quite possibly the first being ever infected with corruption, and certainly the first Death ever encounters. She was on the field at Eden, one of the many angels standing with the horsemen to slay the Nephilim and protect mankind. After the battle, she became corrupted, until finally she believed that everyone except for her had been corrupted. It was she that slaughtered her fellow angels, though this shot makes it look like more than 10, and then she came to Earth to save everyone. Of course, what saving meant was corrupting them. It turns out that in Darksiders continuity, the real-life plague that hit Marseille in 1722, this was a real thing, you can look it up, wasn't caused by rats, disease, or anything so mundane, but was instead corruption, caused by this corrupted angel. She spread the corruption profusely, even crafting talismans that protected those who wore them and infected those who didn't, so that she could get humans to flock to her banner and be saved. As a quick side note on that, the angel here wields a crossblade, just like the one War finds in Darksiders 1, and due to the proliferation of angelic motifs in the cathedral where the crossblade is found, some fans speculate that said cathedral may have been this corrupted angel's stronghold, though that is entirely conjecture. Back to the matter at hand. Death confronts the angel, discovers that she's gone stark raving mad, and the two engage in combat, eventually culminating in Death stabbing her in the back while she proclaims that she will save humanity as she passes corruption onto a human. After Death leaves victorious, that human crawls over to the dead angel, spills the corruption back into her, and her eyes open, corrupted and kept at least partially alive by the corruption once more. Afterward, Death returns to Abaddon, accuses him of knowing it was an angel the whole time, which Abaddon denies, claiming that with 10 of his best slain, he simply assumed it was a demon. The final panels of the comic have Death talking about his eyes being opened to something that no longer waited out in the dark, and promising that when it next reared its head, Death would be ready. And then he wasn't.
And that's basically the story of the Darksiders comic books. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like, and if you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Zanganov and the Steve Bruce, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore or let's play, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like it, hit this subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, go to the link on the left.
And for a video chosen by the gods of YouTube from our channel, hit that link on top.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.